All right. Your next speaker is Antoinette Houston. Antoinette is a dynamic voice at the intersection of STEM, creativity, and human-centered design. A certified usability analyst and seasoned UX professional, she brings a deep passion for innovation, accessibility, and data-driven storytelling. With a background spanning technology, music, and mentorship, Antoinette empowers diverse audiences by bridging the gap between tech and real-world impact. Please welcome your next speaker, Antoinette Houston.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Noah. Thank you, HFI, for having me once again. It is definitely a pleasure being here. You can go to the next slide. Today, we are going to be talking about humanizing product design and the role of voice and tone as relates to microcopy in UX. So let's start with this. Extra, extra, read all about it. But see, audiences, we don't read, we scan. Which always blows me away because to me, good microcopy is the difference between conversion and confusion, right? Trust or tap out, submit, surrender. But if words are tools, think of microcopy as your product's first whisper of, I see you, I got you, to your users. And that's all we want to do, right? Is feel seen and feel as though the products that we're using got us, right? But what happens is a lot of times products fail with that for a number of different reasons. And today's conversation is really going to talk about just some tips and hopefully some good takeaways of how you can combat and create good microcopy. So I was going to talk about a talking toaster. I'm not going to do that now, but I do have a more poignant story if you allow me a couple of minutes. As Noah mentioned, I am an artist as well. And I've released about 3 albums. I have 2 that are coming out. One of my albums, my second album, is called IB. I have a song on that album called Roasted Marshmallows. About 2 weeks ago, I used that song on a video on Instagram. It filters its way through Facebook, and all of a sudden, I get an alert that says copyright claim. I get a little nervous, but not really because my birth name is Antoinette Houston, but my artist name is Tone. And so sometimes I will get those claims and it will just say Tone Houston and I'll just say accept and I'll move on. But that day when I did that, it had my name and it had another person's name. I won't say the name, it doesn't matter. But it was clear that it was some sort of copyright issue. I called my producer. I'm upset with him. I'm like, what is going on? We can't be using these samples. We have to have, clean music. He's like, this is original music. Again, I didn't read. I scanned. I go back to that copyright claim and I start reading a little bit more. And I realized that when I go to Apple Music, this particular person had a song called Bake Marshmallow, which sounded just like my Roasted Marshmallow. Matter of fact, it was exactly my song, just with a slower BPM. It was copyright infringement. I do all the things. I send all my copyright information. I email Apple. I do what's called a digital takedown. And just the other day, I get some resolve. I get an email from Apple, and the body of the email had nothing in it. The title within the email, it says something like copyright resolution or something like that. Attached to the email was an Excel file. I click on the Excel file. The Excel file has one row, right? Number of different columns, my name, this person's name, information that I had provided. When I get to the last 2 columns, the last 2 columns are titled outcome and comment. I'm like, outcome? What? But within outcome, it simply said album removed. And under comment, it said case closed. The best microcopy ever. Even though I had sent tons of information to make sure that this digital takedown happened, I didn't need all of that when it came back. I didn't need, oh, Miss Houston, thank you for, I needed to hear album removed, case closed. In that moment, I felt seen. I felt as though Apple had me. That's what happens with good microcopy. When you have users that come with so many different emotions you don't know, you want to make sure that your product voice is strong and that you're looking at those tone shifts to make sure wherever they're at within your product, within your digital landscape, that they feel seen. Next slide. The magic of words, right? I'm not going to go through all of these, but I kind of want you to look at it, right? Because I've just seen two of these today. Era 403, which grinds my gears. It's ridiculous. It means nothing. And submit. I saw that earlier today as well. But I like to look at it from a standpoint of harsh copy versus friendly microcopy. And if you look at the different versions there, how would you feel if instead of error 403, access denied, how would you feel if it said, oopsies? I love a good oops. I don't know about you all. You don't have access to this page. And then give me a step to do. Maybe check the permissions, maybe contact support. It just feels better, right? Now I'm not frustrated and I know what to do now. The magic of words, it can change a user experience in a single phrase. And when you look at how you're looking at these right now, ask yourself the question, how do each of these make you feel from left to right? Next slide. Because words matter. And the reason why they matter is because they help us feel, they help us think, they help us interact, but it also helps us to trust. And that's the main thing of when users are working with products, they want to be able to trust what they're using and what they're seeing. Even if they're just scanning, they want to be able to trust that. And if they have confidence and clarity, that's going to breed to trust, and that is going to lead to advocacy. Right? Those are the ones that are going to be talking about your product from years to come, telling their friends, telling their families. That's what we all need. I have never met a product designer that doesn't want that. Clear messaging breeds user confidence. Next slide. These are just some real world examples. I don't know about you all, but I would feel amazing if instead of after a form, I filled out all my information. This is a 2, 3, 4, 20-page form, whatever. If instead of submit, I saw get started, that's kind of energizing, right? It makes you feel like, okay, I've done all of this and now something is getting ready to happen. It's just about good versus bad, but also good versus better when you're looking at the world of UX writing. Because UX is design, I promise you. But UX is also language. Next slide. What I just said, right? Clear messaging breeds user confidence breeds trust breeds more user engagement and action, and that's what's going to be the advocacy. That's good. That's what's going to lead to low retention, right? Because people are not leaving. If anything, they're bringing people to your products because they feel seen and they feel heard. Next slide. So let's define what I'm talking about, right? When I talk about voice, I'm talking about your product's personality. We all have personality, right? We walk into the door, we walk into the room with it. When you think about that, you can go to the next slide as well. When you think about that, think about some of the organizations that have that, right? So, next slide. IBM, MailChimp, Duolingo. I don't know about you all. IBM for years has always had a brand presence of it was very, very stoic, right? Very astute, very formal. MailChimp I've used, right? It's a little bit more conversational, a little bit more friendly. Duolingo I haven't used, but I have a lot of friends and family that do. And it's like the way that they gamify their approach to, learning a different language, it has this playful sort of feel that people resonate with when they're using that particular app. So when you're looking at your product's voice, you want to make sure that there's clarity around, are we formal? Are we friendly? Are we playful? And there's obviously nuances in between, right? But usually these are the three sort of buckets that I see. Next slide. What do I mean by tone? So if the product voice is the foundation, right, in layman's terms, it's the personality, right? That's not changing much per se. The tone is where you have these shifts, right? And so I always say design for the tone shifts because that's based off of context, it's based off a different emotion. A error message tone should be different than a success message. A blank page state should be different than a page that's loading, right? So you have your product voice, but then those tones is where it goes from more neutral, maybe more supportive, maybe highly supportive. And again, if you kind of read through these examples here, I know there are at least 50 out of the 100 people on here that have seen invalid password or page not found. I'm willing to bet my life on it. But how would you feel, right, if you see something a little bit more supportive? It makes you, it encourages you a bit, right? Highly supportive, there's that oopsie again, right? The oops allows, at least for me as a user, I start thinking like, oh, it's not anything that I did. Maybe it's something else, or maybe it is something I did. But I don't feel bad about it, right? Because it's a lot more supportive tone. So it's based off emotion, but it's almost better to have an apologetic and an encouraging tone um, versus anything else. Next slide. And what I mean by microcopy, we see it every day. We see it on buttons, right? Tooltips. We definitely see it on error messages, success messages. We see it within forms and labels. Small words, right? One, two, three phrases within some of these things. But again, there's a difference between submit and get started, right? It just feels different. It's a difference between first name versus please provide your first name. It feels better. And that's really what UX is. That's why I got into UX, right? It's a feeling that sometimes doesn't come natural. But again, you can have the most beautiful product. And if users don't understand what the purpose of it is and what they're looking at as they're going through a particular workflow, et cetera, it's gonna fail when it comes to the usability part. It's just a fact. Next slide. Let's get some examples. Conversational versus robotic. I've definitely seen state your request on a lot of the I'm here in Chicago, a lot of the Illinois government websites. It's like, what is happening? Right? A simple hi would have made my day. People want you to speak to them, not at them. That's not just with UX, that's in life, right? Be human, be relatable, be empathetic. Next slide. Reducing cognitive load. We've all heard this. Simple language allows people to process information faster, faster decision making, right? We don't need all the jargon. Complex and simplified. What is being said on the complex side is absolutely correct. It is. But it also can be said in a more simplified way, right? That still gets the same understanding out. And so really, I guess I'm saying to just kind of take that beat a lot of times when looking at microcopy and looking at language, because it's a lot of times, and I've worked as a developer, designer, and now as a research and strategist and speaker, but a lot of times we don't, right? We'll create these, and I've done it initially years ago, right? You do these great designs and you put lorem ipsum. You don't worry about the copy. It'll come later. We'll get to that. No, no, no. Get to it now. Get to it while you're designing the process, designing the workflow, right? It makes a difference. Next slide. Obviously being inclusive and accessible, we've all heard this. But looking at it from a standpoint of staying and being culturally aware, right? This is just an example of using very gender neutral sort of terms, obviously making sure that they're screen reader friendly as well, but just on forms and things, right? Just making sure that there's a level of accessibility, but also a deeper level of inclusivity amongst just everything that we're designing. It's just the world that we're in now, right? And I think that as a designer, we should take pride in that. Next slide. Here's a case study. This was maybe about 7, 8 years ago. I used to be a huge, 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 huge supporter and user of Airbnb. I remember actually some of the screens that were very, I would say, robotic, formal, maybe, right? Sign up, name, email, password. I don't know if they were trying to save space or what, but I remember that experience. But again, the prices were great. I still use the service, right? But after they changed it, I noticed how much I was missing. Look at the header differences here. Sign up. It's clear. I'll probably sign up. But what about after they improved it? Join our community of travelers. Ooh, community. I want to be part of a community. It makes you feel good, right? Not just name, what is your name? Talk to me like I'm a person. Not just give me your email. What's your best email? Thank you for allowing me to think about that. How many of us have 4, 5, 10 different emails? It's the small changes that make the biggest differences. Again, UX is design, but UX is language. Look at the error message. Invalid email versus is another one. Oopsie is good. Right? It just makes me feel usually, and I've spoken to thousands of users. A good will make the user feel like, again, the system is taking that accountability. It's thinking about, I don't know about that email. What if you use this format? Even it's the same thing. Invalid email is still an invalid email. I don't have the @ sign. But the way in which it's talking to me, right, or displaying the language to me, it makes me feel more empowered versus anything else less than that. Next slide. So, best practices. I think I have maybe 3 slides left. Short is variable, let me just say. I'm in no way saying only use 1 word, 2 word, 3. Short is gonna depend on your organization, right? But clear and actionable for sure. You wanna make sure that you are doing that. It's a standard best practice. 10 years from now, this best practice will still be relevant, I promise you. Clarity and actionable when it comes to microcopy is always gonna be key. Next slide. But the 3 takeaways you can go back to your teams right now to humanize product copy. You want to audit for that voice alignment. Again, voice is the personality, it's the foundation, right? Are the values of this product, is it highlighting the values of my company and my organization? Is it highlighting the values of my users and their needs and all of the context around it? Maybe you audit monthly, quarterly, at least yearly, or anytime there's any sort of product release, right? Where the language is changing. Design for the tone shifts. Error message, shift. Success, empty state, loading, right? You can still be supportive, I hope, or you can still be formal like IBM, but an error message should definitely, the tone should shift from an error message to a success message, from an empty state to a loading page, right? And then include marginalized voices in the room. I always say the representation that you have in the room is the representation that you have in the result. It matters. So have your UX writers, have your researchers, have your designers, have your developers, have some sort of key representation from leadership, have other stakeholder teams. Even if they're flies on the wall, ask them that question: how does it make you feel? How does the screen make you feel? You'd be surprised the aha moments that come out of that, of like, I didn't even think about that. It could be the word choice, the word placement, right? Next slide. Just talked about it, right? Having the collaboration. And then I think the last slide. When I almost lost, or when I had to fight for the copyright of my music, it wasn't just about a copyright claim. It was about my voice being taken. Right? So you want to make sure that your product's voice is never taken. You want to make sure that your team and your organization is very clear on that, right? But you also want to make sure that those tone shifts happen, and understand that when you design with heart, when you build with soul, when you have these products that have copy that feel like a conversation, regardless of whether it's formal, friendly, playful, or anything in between, when you have that, you may just oftentimes realize that a person's joy, resolve, confidence, trust lies in between those few words. It matters. Thank you. Love to take your questions now. I think the last slide is just about questions. I got through that with 2 minutes to spare. Love it.
Well, so we have some time for some questions. Let's
Yes.
see. Open up the Q&A box. Reminder to please put your questions in the Q&A box. First question we have, Uh, Jishnu Kidile asks, love the point of asking the team, how does this make you feel as it forces
Mhm.
reflection, Antoinette? When designing for an international audience, in your experience, what is the best approach to write effective microcopy for different audience segments?
I always say use plain language, right, for
Mm,
that particular area. It's not just about translating, um, into whatever that language is, right? So plain language in US terms may not be so plain in India, right? Or Africa or Canada, any other place, Asia, right? So
yeah.
it's about understanding localization and what and where your users are and what and how they use language there.
Mhm.
But plain language is always going to be the way to go with that for sure. So I definitely would start there. Testing, I got my certifications from HFI. I'm trained in it. Testing, testing, testing. I'm always going to be an advocate for usability, A/B testing to show not just tell the story, but show the ROI of the results. Right? If you feel like, well, this should work for whoever, and then but have some options, right? And then A/B test that to make sure so that you can have that clear ROI and traceability. I think those are the two main ways to go: test and use plain language and have some options.
Next up, Nishi Haider asks, as of today, has the conversation, all AI technology improved as in identifying different tones and accents?
That's a good question. I would say that it's a constant balance, right? And we just heard from Susan, some of the things to kind of look out for. But I think as agentic sort of AI is just continuing to be present and poignant, I think that the LLMs are going to have to continue to look at um she used the word fluid, right? Fluid sort of tones and shifts as we talk about language. And I think now it's GPT and some of the other ones are doing a really good job. I think in 2 years it's going to be even better. In 10 years, who knows, right? But I think that if it stays on this scale, the hope is that those tone shifts will definitely continue to take place, and it's going to depend on the user too, and the energy and emotion that the AI LLM is going to be taking from what is being asked too, right? So with certain things that we can say that that model might take it one way. So I think as the AI model learns us as humans, not just
Mm.
individuals, it's going to continue, hopefully in a good way, not against us, to uh to be as fluid as possible.
Next up, Bo Wang asks, how do you manage the fine line between being cheerful and patronizing while also
Very
complimenting
carefully,
us? Mhm.
very carefully. I feel as though when you come in authentic, hopefully that resonates, right? And I feel as though I am. I've had a lot of times that I've gotten knocked down in this world of UX, but I think what happens is every time I get knocked down, I learn, I grow, I stretch, and I understand why that is, and I try to make that very poignant in any sort of discussion that I have. So I like to be, for me now in terms of tone and language, I think that, for example, with Duolingo, it does have a playful sort of gamification, right?
Mm.
If you are way to the right, just being overly cheerful, it can come off as patronizing. I couldn't give an example of that. What I can
Mm.
say is that when you have those marginalized voices in the room, right? I'm sure someone else may
Mm.
say, it kind of comes off a little patronizing. Even if one person says it out of 8 people, that's something to consider, right?
Yeah.
To have the different versions of that. So it's just about knowing your audiences, and taking ego out of it in either way. Yep.
All right. That's all the questions we have. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for assisting, and thank you all for your questions. It's a pleasure. Thank you at HFI. Always amazing.
A big round of applause coming in the emotes. All right. Thanks again.
I love it. Take care.